Supercar Special. 50 years of Bond in motion.
The world was introduced to Bond in 1962 when Sean Connery hit the big screens in a film called Dr. No, and again in 1963 in From Russia with Love. But it was only until 1964, on the third film, that the producers decided to introduce a James Bond car. The film was Goldfinger, and the car was an Aston Martin DB5.
There are cars in which every man should have sat in the driver's seat, that are distinctive, influential, and simply full of style, which bring the blood of every lead-footed driver to boil. This includes with certainty the Aston Martin DB5, and which, by the way, is also one of the most beautiful cars in the world. A total of 4 Astons with Bond extras were built in Newport Pagnell. The original vehicle with registration number BMT216A had the full accessories. A second car with the original registration FMP7B was used for driving shots and visually upgraded. In 1966, 2 other DB5 Bond vehicles were added to advertise for the next film in the US, Fireball. But so much for the history. The good news: you don't need a license to kill to drive a DB5. Neither should your mechanic answer to the nickname Q. And your employer doesn't even have to be the British Secret Service MI6. It is enough to have a license to drive. The bad news? Well, those who don't already have an Aston Martin DB5 in the garage have bad luck, because the icon from Newport Pagnell is in demand like never before, and now truly is outweighed with gold.
So you may ask, why the Aston Martin? Well, the story goes that journalist Ian Fleming was writing his first book, Casino Royale, when he received a letter from one of his regular readers. And they suggested that Bond drives an Aston Martin DB3, the make of the 50s. Fleming went for it, so he gave Bond an Aston Martin. And what a fantastic car he chose.
To see that DB5 and to see it in the Bond film is phenomenal. Over the years, I've done sequences with many other Bond cars. I directed the chase in the Brent Cross car park with the remote control BMW, and I wrecked 17 of those in that chase. I directed the chase in Iceland with the Aston Martin and the Jaguar XK. We had 4 of those each, and they cost over $1 million each to be made into 4-wheel drive. They're on exhibition here, so I have a great connection with those. But personally, from happy young man's memories, it has to be the DB5. But then you look at this exhibition, it's just phenomenal when you look around at all the different types of cars there are. It's a job to comprehend there are that many different cars and see the evolution of cars. And for me, the evolution of cars in movie business is only a short period compared to what this museum's all about, but it's still fantastic to be able to come and see it all. Well, I think this event would be certainly one your whole family would love to come to. Dad would have memories, your mum would have memories, the kids would have aspirations and envy. Yes, I think it's absolutely something you could come back, and it's not only the cars, there's some great visual aids here with the videos of the sequences and photographs. I see around the corner here's a storyboard from the car chase in Brent Cross in the remote control car.
When you see this beautiful specimen, you may ask why it took the brains behind Bond to take so long to put a car into one of their movies. Well, the answer is simple: low budget and no money to spare. But on the third movie, they approached the Aston Martin manufacturers. They, of course, refused and refused and refused. But eventually, they said yes. And there started the most beautiful relationship between Bond and his car.
The DB5, one of the most famous vehicles in the Bond series itself, when they got their hands on it, they spent £25,000 on the car to do all the gadgets. That's more than 5 times the price of the DB5 itself. Gadgets include the bulletproof shield that went up from behind, bulletproof windows, the rotating number plates and machine guns, and not to forget the ejector seat.
He lies there on a bench with a laser between his legs, expecting to be cut in half. He turns to Goldfinger and says, "Do you expect me to talk?" Goldfinger replies and says, "No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die." A classic line, but just like Bond himself, the Aston Martin DB5 refused to die.
Okay, so GoldenEye, the DB5 makes its return visit in 1995. It appears was his debut film. It's also used in Skyfall, the new film by Daniel Craig, his 3rd film as Bond, arguably the best Bond so far. The vehicle itself has machine guns on front and the ejector seat. Unfortunately, it comes to its unrivaling end when it gets blown up.
Poor DB5.
I do love the Vanquish, but I think the DB5 will always be the emotional heart of the Bond for me, yeah.
The Goldfinger Aston Martin DB5 is one of the most famous cars in the world, and in 2012 it was sold to a car fanatic for a whopping £2.6 million. Enter Mr. Daniel Craig. In 2006, Ian Fleming's first ever Bond book, Casino Royale, finally hits the big screen, and the chosen car is a stunning Aston Martin DBS. What the car lacks in supersonic gadgets, it certainly makes up for in sheer looks alone. But how does it compare to other James Bond cars?
So Casino Royale is known for one of the most brutal car stunts that Bond has done, and this is the Aston Martin DBS in which he did it. After he thinks he's beaten the villain, Le Chiffre, at the game of poker, Vesper Lynd is kidnapped from him and he sets chase. Unfortunately, she's left in the middle of the road. He has to swerve to avoid her and completes 7 consecutive rolls, breaking actually the world record for the stunt.
This car is something of a powerball with a tie, a fine British tie. Despite its mostly reticent British lack, the 2-seater coupe brings a unique aura to even the most ordinary parking lot. One thinks immediately of swanky resorts and casino glamour. After all, the gentleman racer in dinner jacket tries hard to please the bourgeois reality. If you ask a DBS driver how much horsepower he has in his vehicle, you'll get the following response: enough. It's important to know that you could if you want. But once you sit in a DBS, you don't want anything else, racing, drifting, and acting big on asphalt. Nevertheless, the power values are really impressive.
It's the gadgets associated with each individual Bond car that holds a special place in our memories. It's passion and fantasy that's satisfied through innovation.
Casino Royale, the stunt where the car rolled for the record-breaking number of rolls. I mean, that car was a challenge because it's actually broken up. I mean, it doesn't roll on its wheels or anything. You virtually had to carry that thing in.
This striking DBS suffers an ordeal in 2008 in the movie The Quantum of Solace, where Daniel Craig throws the car around roads and tunnels circling Lake Garda in Italy. This is also the movie where M shows the tiniest bit of emotion towards Bond, where she says, "I want you back," and he replies, "I never left." But is this the end of the DBS?
Bond's being chased by two Alfa Romeos at this point, as well as losing the door to a rather vicious crash with a lorry. He's sprayed with bullets, he barely makes it in one piece, but in fact he manages to drop off the villain Mr. White to the MI6 safe house. The car's barely running at this point, but it's the last we see of it. You'll have to draw your own conclusions as to what happens afterwards.
Now, you would think that Daniel Craig wouldn't think twice about an Aston Martin being his favourite ever Bond car, and how wrong you would be. He's actually made claims to say that his favourite car is from the movie You Only Live Twice, and it is a Toyota 2000 GT. The Bond car is not just a car, it's more than a car. It's the personification of a car. It can be likened to your best friend, your sexy girlfriend, your partner in crime. It's all about the personality of the car.
It's not just a car, it actually is a character. And I think that's what we're all feeling. We're seeing the cars, but we're imagining far more. And that is the magic of Bond films.
So what went wrong in the 90s? Why did they go for a BMW?
There's no reason for the swap from the Aston Martins to the BMW. There are 3 films from the Pierce Brosnan days which included BMWs. We had the Z3 from GoldenEye, which had a very short 2-minute sequence, and then we had the Z8, which was from The World Is Not Enough. Unfortunately, that car got cut in half. And then we had the BMW 7 Series, where Bond's trying to portray himself as a Swedish banker, which fits him quite well. Obviously, the fans were quite upset with the change from the Aston Martin to the BMW, and it obviously might have taken effect, even with all the gadgets on the cars.
Movies in the mid-90s were well known for their stunts and being filmed with jam-packed action. Well, the producers seemed to be obsessed with blowing everything up in sight, and Bond movies were no different. This meant that the gadgets had to be even more innovative. And you'll remember that famous scene where Pierce Brosnan manages to drive his BMW 750 from the back of his car from his mobile phone.
And to be able to make it technically possible was no easy task for the film crew and the stuntman. A BMW 750iL was destroyed during testing alone.
But did this make up for the fact that the BMW was the Bond car for 3 movies? Maybe this was a time where the James Bond car lost its spirit and its image. A car that drives very, very fast on land, turns into a submarine because I get forced off a cliff and have to drive underwater. Oh, Roger Moore has one. He drove it in The Spy Who Loved Me in 1977, the Lotus Esprit.
Any gadget on my car? Oh, I think I'd like it to come with Roger, basically. I think I'd like him as my gadget, my magic man. He'll do.
The Lotus Esprit was discovered as it was really noticeably parked outside the film studios. The former chief marketing officer at Lotus had hoped that the British wedge would be discovered as a screen star, and it worked.
Probably one of the most iconic of Bond cars of all time. It was most definitely the coolest and did the most unexpected things.
This is the Lotus Esprit from The Spy Who Loved Me, Roger Moore's main Bond car, we'd probably say. It brings back the idea of a fully tricked out vehicle. It's got several gadgets. It sprays ink out the back, it fires harpoons out the front, but most importantly, we all remember it turns into a submarine. It's actually the only vehicle that Q drops off personally. He actually drives it to Bond, who drives it off without reading the instruction manuals, without even listening to even the slightest speech. It's a good thing he did take it in, though, because he does successfully get away and ends up finding a lot more out about the villain underwater.
Looking back, walking through the exhibition, it was like a walk down memory lane for me. There were like the Glastron boat. It was like the second Bond film I worked on, where I worked on all the gadgets on the back of it. But you know, it's such a history that you've got in this exhibition. It's absolutely incredible. Because in every James Bond film that comes up, as soon as James Bond gets in a car, the audience are asking what's going to happen. You know, what is it going to do? Where is it going to go? You know, and every single one of these vehicles has a story to tell about what it did in the film. You know, whether it be the Aston Martins on the ice lake, the BMWs in car parks. You know, every one of them has a story to tell. And that's what's it's such an interesting journey. For me personally, I mean, this is, I'm working on my 13th Bond now in Skyfall, and walking, you know, around this exhibition, it's there are memories throughout my whole life. You know, every single Bond film that I've worked on. It was quite emotional actually, seeing all the old. You know, I built that bit on that car or that boat. It was. Yeah, quite very emotional actually to see all these great cars. You know, it's a 50-year legacy.
Roger Moore certainly takes the prize for being the most womanising Bond ever to be seen on screen. And he does an absolute classic in The Man with the Golden Gun, where he talks to one of his Bond girls. Miss Anders, I didn't recognise you with your clothes on. Unfortunately, he wouldn't recognise me with or without my clothes on. The year is 2002. The film, Die Another Day. Bond is Pierce Brosnan. He drives an Aston Martin V12 Vanquish, and the baddie's car is green.
Even James Bond ran away from this car, and not just because it was incredibly fast.
It had the most impressive array of gadgets. There was the rear-mounted Gatling gun, mortars in the boot, rockets in the front grille, a thermal imaging system, and the best ever, a hydraulic battering ram system. Zhao, the baddie, was truly evil, but Bond still managed to save the day, rescue Bond girl Halle Berry, and he lived to tell another tale. But you have to admit, this Jaguar XKR convertible is still one of the best baddie Bond cars in the history of the films. Bond cars have become more and more intelligent over the years, reflecting how technology has moved on leaps and bounds over the last 50 years.
One of the most famous features in this car was the ejector button for the baddie sat in the passenger seat that came out flying out through the roof. So standard Aston Martin gear lever, flick it over, press the button, and he's out of your car through the roof. We have the sat-nav, a very early system. You'll see that in the film, bleeping away as they drove through the Alps with a little red dot as to the location. Buttons for the bullet screen that comes up behind the rear windscreen. Nails that drop out the car that actually wasn't used in the film. Smoke, oil slick, machine guns at the front, rear-facing cannons, all the gizmo buttons in the centre. So this registration is the standard contemporary registration for the car in the year, so it could be hidden driving down the roads, as one would be. Obviously the French plate, 007 James Bond. And the other way around if you want to pose in the UK. Yeah, so this is the front-facing machine gun, and it comes out, pushes the indicator down and shoots at your enemy. Here is the mechanism that winds up the bullet shield.
There's not one person on this planet that hasn't fantasized being James Bond or sleeping with James Bond. And that fantasy extends to owning a James Bond car.
To a lot of people, the cars are more important or just as important as James Bond himself. So the part of the films is the cars. So for the fans to be able to come and actually touch them and play with them, I think it speaks for itself.
We've always been massive Bond fans while we're here. But yeah, privileged.
I don't think you have to be a boy to like this. No, it's for everyone, and it's all really interesting. And just because it's cars and motorbikes doesn't mean it's necessarily for boys.
I love cars and there's loads of cool cars.
It's almost impossible not to fall in love twice, once with Bond and again with his car.
Wait years to touch that car.
Well, to see them is something quite different, because you see them in the films and then you see them actually in the flesh. I mean, it's like you're meeting a film star themselves, because they are that iconic.
Which has been your favourite car?
The crashed one.
The crashed one, the Aston Martin that they crashed and they rolled it.
It's amazing. It's all here, isn't it? I mean, it's so well done as well. You know, you can get to see the clips of the films and then look at the actual vehicles themselves. It's fantastic.
50 years of Bond car personalities. These cars are most definitely celebrities in their own right.
Fabulous vehicles, and of course the wonderful DB5 that I'm sat in front, that's come all the way from Holland on loan from the Dutch National Motor Museum. Beauty are always trying to be novel, refresh the brand, be interesting for all sorts of people. We don't want Bewley just to be for the petrol head, we want it for the family, and this Bond brand spreads right across all of the different vogues of the people, the celebrity and the families, the children recognise. Every Bond film's got something from the future in, and we reflect on that and think, that's quite funny. But this Aston Martin's got a GPS in it, or an early version, so it means all sorts of things to all sorts of people, and it means that people who come to Bewley and see what else we've got here have a much more enjoyable day. I think one of the big things that's really good for the Bond fan is that you can actually have a tactile link with these stars. You know, these cars are the stars, and they can come down. And there's no doubt in anybody's mind that these are the actual vehicles that appeared in the film. And so we can quite clearly say, you've seen the film, this is the vehicle, or one of the vehicles that was in that film. I think when you come and see the Bond exhibition, you should really come and look at what we call the ice cave, is where we are at the moment, which has got most of the vehicles that appeared in some of the ice shots, and is the AV show that's running there with the noise and the film, and follow it through, and you'll see the vehicles highlighted as they appear in the film clips, and it's just a fabulous experience.
007 has ruled the world of action heroes for half a century, and I'm sure he'll continue to rule for another 50 years. The girls, the cutting-edge technology, and most importantly, the cars feed our wildest dreams. The era of Bond will live forever.